Welcome to KMV Travel, the podcast. This is episode 10, and my name is Kelly. And today I am joined by a special group of people who I am so excited to have on the show. I am with Erica, Jackie, and Andrea, who are all agents with me on KMV Travel. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes,
I'm excited to relive this night.
Oh my gosh, I know. I'm so excited. We're going to be talking about our latest experience that we had as a team doing the RIP tour at Halloween Horror Nights 33 at Universal Orlando. So we were a group of 10 and we made up 4 of those 10. So we're going to go through everything that we did. This was our first time for all of us doing an RIP tour, but we all kind of come in with with some different backgrounds when it comes to HHN. So how about we start there? If you guys can introduce yourselves, say your name, anything else you want to share about yourself, but then also like, what did you come into this experience with? Had you been to Halloween Horror Nights before? Was this a first time? And we'll start with Erica.
Yeah, so I'm Erica. I live in the Panhandle of Florida, so I don't get to Universal too much when I head to Central Florida. But this was my first Halloween Horror Night, so expectations were very high to be terrified. But yeah, first HHN.
Yes, and Erica came into it. You were very nervous with this,
so
right?
nervous. I had anxiety for a week leading up to this. Terrified. The scariest movie I think we talked about was that I've ever seen was Ghostbusters back in like the 90s. So the limit I was at going into this experience.
We'll get her, her whole review on it by the end. We won't have any spoilers. Jackie, how about you?
So my journey to this year's Horror Nights has been a long time coming. I'm originally from New York, and I was supposed to do my first Horror Nights back in 2020. My husband and I had a wedding down here in Florida, and we decided to build the trip out from there. Since it was in October, we were going to do our first Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween. We were going to do our first Horror Nights, and needless to say, none of that happened because of the pandemic. So I didn't get to do my first Horror Nights until we moved to Florida in 2022, and we just loved it. We knew that one night was never going to be enough. So we knew immediately that we wanted to do a pass. And then ironically, last year when we had the opportunity to do it, we had 2 weddings back to back up in New York in October. And we were like, well, there's no point in doing a pass now when we're going to be traveling so much. So this year I got to experience the Rush of Fear Pass, which is a pass that gives you access to the first 18 horror nights. So essentially the entire month of September, give or take, depending when it starts. It might, if it starts earlier, you might get that for the last weekend of August. But essentially you can go as many times as you want. And yes, that does include weekends. So we did the math on it and we figured that it was going to pay for itself in 3 visits. And by the time all is said and done, we're going to get there about 5 or 6 times.
That's awesome. I know if you are listening to this and you're a Halloween Horror Nights fan, you know just how great it is to get to experience it multiple times, because the first time you go through, you're really focused on the scares. And then the next times that you get to go through, as I've heard, you get to really focus on the houses themselves. So I'll share my experience after we go to Andrea.
My name is Andrea. I recently relocated back to the Central Florida area after living in Virginia for the past 13 years. And I did the math. So the last time I had gone to Halloween Horror Nights was 21 years ago.
Wow.
Back when I worked there. So it's been a minute, and I did the math and I was like, oof. But no, the last time I had been to Halloween Horror Nights was 21 years ago.
And you were saying it was very different, which we would assume 21 years apart that there'd be some big differences.
It was very, very different. I feel like the production value has gone up exponentially. So yeah, it was a really great time. There weren't 10 houses back then. I want to say there may have been just a handful.
There probably was like, you probably went one night back then and like you did not need to have Rush of Fear or Frequent Fear Pass or things like that. Like, you could get it all done in one night.
Well, no, I don't think so, because I think because the lack of houses and the way that they were spread out this year, I remember back in the day, they were all kind of boom, 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 boom in kind of one centralized location that like everybody was just there. And so the lines would get really, really long because they weren't spread out like they are now.
Yeah. So you get the pros and cons, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
think we've got a lot of pros with the 21 years past there. So my experience with Halloween Horror Nights, I'm pretty much a newbie still. This is my second year going. So our first year we went was last year, my husband and I really pushed for us to go because of the Stranger Things house. I do not like jump scares. Like I'm the person that's in a movie and there's a loud noise and I jump. Like it's not scary. There's just a loud noise. That's it. So I was like, this is not going to be good for me, but I have to go because of Stranger Things. And I went and it was awesome. I did Stranger Things in the Chucky house and absolutely loved them. And so then I was like, you know what? If I'm going to do this again, I got to do this in a way where I can see all the houses, really enjoy myself and not stress out. And that's kind of where the RIP tour came from. I brought it up to Jackie and our other friends, and they said we're on board. And then we kind of just wrangled more people in. But yeah, it's such a fun way to see it. And we're going to get into all that. But for people that may not know what Halloween Horror Nights is, we kind of touched on a little bit. But Jackie, can you give us like an elevator pitch for Halloween Horror Nights?
It is an annual Halloween event at Universal. It's currently in its 33rd year. It's offered at all of the Universal parks, so not just here in Florida. It's offered in Hollywood, Singapore, and Japan. I can only speak for Orlando. We kind of hit on this a little bit before about how much it's changed. It used to only be offered Friday through Sunday, so it was a weekend event. As Andrea said, much less houses. This year, it is up to 48 nights from August to early November. So just to give everyone an idea of how much it's grown over the years. It takes place from Thursdays to Sundays. Um, and I think, speaking from my experience, the Rush of Fear Pass for September was the perfect thing because we were able to get so much use and do so much with it because the crowds are a little bit lower at this time. The closer you get to Halloween, you're going to see a bigger draw for crowds. But I would definitely recommend, because of the way that this event has grown, getting tickets in advance. You can buy them that night at the door, depending on availability. But I think this is getting to a point where it is so popular, I wouldn't recommend, leaving everything into the day of. And that's where the RIP tour was so worth it to do, which I know we're going to get into.
Yeah, and I would say too, with the tickets, getting them in advance versus buying them when you're there, you make such a good point with that, Jackie, because it's going to be less expensive to buy them in advance too. It will
Yes.
get more expensive at the gate, so it really makes no sense to do it not in advance. Um, but let's talk about the RIP tour. And Andrea, can you give us like an overview of what is an RIP tour? Again, our elevator pitch.
Yeah, well, the RIP tour it's a guided VIP tour through all Halloween Horror Nights has to offer, including the houses, the scare zones, shows, and any other rides that are operating during the event, as well as entertainment that's also continuously offered during the event as well.
It is a packed evening. And I feel like we just keep getting into more of these different things. So, Erica, do you want to talk a little bit about what's actually included in an RIP tour? And there's two different types of tours, right? So there's a private tour and then a non-private. So why don't we start with the private tour? Because that's what we did.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first thing, you get this beautiful, like, RIP tour credential lanyard, which makes you feel very important, which you got to love those for your private tour guides, which you get on the non-private as well. But I just loved getting that at the beginning. You get that special VIP entrance to Universal Studios. So you get to kind of avoid the crowds as you go into the parks. And then you also get a pre-tour reception, which I thought was just incredible. They really go all out. It's themed, the snacks, the drinks, everything was just perfect. And then my favorite part of the private RIP tour is it's a customizable itinerary. So that's great if you have people that have never been. Their scare factor is a little bit lower, so you can kind of play around with what houses you go into first. So that customizable itinerary. And then you also have unlimited immediate VIP entry into the houses. So while you're with your guide, if you really enjoyed one of the houses, you can circle back around and try it out again if you like the sets or maybe you missed something. You also have reserved seating for shows and unlimited express pass or access to participating rides that are going on that night with your lanyard, so your RIP tour credentials following the tour, and then access to cash bar locations, which again follow the theme for the entire Halloween Horror Nights, excuse me. But that's for the private tour, and that's up to 10, I believe 10 guests that you get with your dedicated tour guide.
Yeah, so we did 10 guests,
Mhm.
which was great to have. And it was all, I mean, we just had a group of friends that kind of came together, which kept the cost down too. Because the one thing with the RIP tours, obviously you're paying for this heightened experience, and it does not include the cost of your Halloween Horror Night ticket. So for some of us, it like, you know, Jackie has the Rush of Fear. The annual pass ticket that I have through Universal actually includes a Halloween Horror Night ticket. So we didn't have to worry about that. But Andrea and Erica did have to purchase those tickets separately. But I still, you know, they ask that we don't kind of share pricing of anything because pricing is going to be dynamic. So what you pay on a Sunday night versus a Friday night is going to be different versus, you know, September versus October. But it was very reasonable. I will say that for the experience that we got with that private tour. But the non-private tour, Erica, do you want to talk a little bit about what that, maybe just like what the difference is there?
Yeah. So the difference is one of the biggest difference that I forgot to mention for the private tour is that you can start as early as 5:30, and then it continues throughout the entire event, which is 2 a.m. So a non-private tour, you're going to have 4 hours, so it lasts up to 4 hours. And there's going to be 12 guests that you're going through with. You may or may not know them all. If you know people that want to do the non-private, you can have up to 6 people in your immediate party. So that's one of the big differences, is that you do not have the tour guide for the entire night. You have it for 4 hours. And that's going to limit the number of times you can go into the houses. So it's not unlimited like you get with the private. You're going to go through one time through the immediate VIP entry while you're with your tour guide. And then you'll still get all the extras. So the specialized seating for the shows, the unlimited express access. You don't get into the houses like we said, but also you don't get that customizable itinerary, which was my biggest selling factor, was knowing that you can actually switch it up with how you want to go through the houses. So they're going to already have that itinerary for you.
Yeah, I think all of us will probably agree that if we, you know, if budgets weren't in the picture, we all would pick the private tour. But the non-private tour is a really great way to do it if you want to basically just know that you're going to get into every house. But it is because of the time limit that they have, it's not going to be as kind of relaxed. And we'll get into this a little bit more with how our experience was with the private tour. It's going to probably be more like, okay, house, 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 like you're going to be moving through. But that's perfect. I think that is a great explanation of that. So, why don't we talk about what our expectations were for the tour before we got in? Jackie, do you want to take us with the go off on that one?
Of course. I actually had pretty low expectations going in. I mean, I love the event, that goes without saying. So, you know, it's not like I was expecting them to do anything less than like completely blow us away, but I was just trying to keep an open mind because my focus was totally the houses and maybe picking up details that I hadn't seen yet. Because prior to doing the RIP tour, I had gotten there 3 nights. So I had done, I think, about 6 houses at that point, and I was excited to learn a little bit more about them. Maybe learn something that I didn't see, because I will totally admit my husband has about a foot on me. So if I don't want to see something, I don't see it. I just hide behind him. I let him take the scare. So that was what I was most looking forward to, was learning a little bit more about the details and the production design. For me, you know, you get so much value with this tour because you're also getting the express pass, but I honestly didn't care if we got on a ride or not. That wasn't my, you know, main reason for being there. It was all about the houses. To me, the drinks and getting to sample all of the food, like that was just an added bonus. And um, really our tour guide is what put it over the top. Like it was already a great event, And because we had Dwayne, he just went above and beyond. So going in with an open mind is always the way to go because everything will exceed your expectations. But I was just completely blown away.
Yeah, definitely. Andrea, how about you? Not having gone in 21 years, what was your experience? What were you thinking about before you were heading in?
Well, I've never done a VIP tour before, so my expectations going in were pretty high for, the price that we were paying. Um, and I think that they were all exceeded. Like Jackie had touched on, our tour guide Dwayne, he was absolutely phenomenal. The only thing that kind of exceeded again my expectations was I thought like I had a really big lunch because I thought it was going to be like going here and there and here and there, and I didn't think that we were going to have a lot of downtime. And then having that wonderful lounge access and the downtime, and we did everything at such a leisurely pace, and I thought that that really exceeded my expectations for that as well, because I thought it was going to be crazy, rush here, rush here, rush there, rush there, even though we did have, the VIP access. Um, I still thought it was going to be a very rushed evening, and it really wasn't. And so that was really amazing as well. We got to slow down, take it at our pace, kind of do whatever we wanted to do. And we had Dwayne, and he was great.
Yeah, it was, I think, and I don't know if you guys had the same experience, but prior to the tour, so I was the one who booked the tour, like actually it was, under my name. So I got all the communications and everything. And I still felt like I wasn't 100% sure what we were going to be getting into. So I'm kind of with you, Andrea, where I was like, I knew there was food, but I also wasn't sure, like, are we talking like Lil Nosh or are we
Yeah.
talking like the
Mhm.
spread that they had?
Mhm.
So yeah, I would recommend if you are doing a VIP, an RIP tour, I should say. I
Don't
always
eat.
recommend, yeah, don't eat. I would say book through a travel advisor, book through KMV Travel, of course. But if you're not going to do that, where you can kind of, get that information from someone, do your research before, just so you can kind of know what you're getting into, not to spoil anything, but to be prepared. Um, Erica, how about you?
Yeah, so my expectations going in was to become best friends with the tour guide because I did not know if I was going into the houses. I'm like, this is going to be a great time. We've got food, we've got snacks, we've got drinks. I'm going to be around some friends I don't get to see all the time. And I'm going to be best friends with the tour guide because I will not be going into the houses. So that was really my expectation going in. Um, like we've talked about before, my fear factor is very low. I do not like to be scared. So being able to actually experience that with y'all, like to go through those houses, to have that encouragement from Dwayne, to see the support from Jackie, like having Jackie go through first, exceeded all my expectations. I was actually able to enjoy the houses, which I did not when we started that night. I would have been, if you would have told me I was going to go through 5 houses, I would have said you're crazy. So very low expectations for me as far as getting my money's worth, exceeded all expectations by the end of the night.
We were so proud of Erica because she
You did
killed it. She
amazing.
did so good.
Yeah. Such a
Um,
trooper.
yes, she was such a trooper. Oh my gosh. So I feel like I went in with, I had done a VIP tour at Walt Disney World and Disneyland before. And those, if anyone ever has ever experienced them, two very different experiences, which I can go into, but that will be a whole monologue. So we'll do that on a different episode. But I kind of went in with that background, but also knowing that Universal and Disney are two very different properties, and they do things very differently. I knew the fact that they had food included was already going to be a difference than a Disney tour. At Walt Disney World, you get some like pretzels and things like that, but nothing compared to what you get on this tour. So I was extremely impressed by it. I didn't love the way that they handled the check-in process. I felt like that was not like up to what I would have expected, because it was kind of like, okay, where are we going? But that also may have just been like my anxiousness for the night to begin. But I just thought like some signage, a little bit, more than just like the RIP tour signage would have been good. But I think once the tour actually started, once we met Dwayne and the whole experience just kind of went on, I was so impressed with how they handled it, what you got for the amount that you were paying, and just how like easy it was. Like it truly was just, we went and we were like, hey, we want to do this. And it's like, okay, let's go. Like there was no, rushing, which is something that I wasn't, really, that's not what I was used to on a Disney VIP tour, where you're kind of like, all right, we want to do Tron, so we got to do this, and like everything there. And obviously very different tours because that's a whole park day versus a very specific event. But the whole feel was just so nice. And I love a Disney VIP tour. If anybody wants to take me, I'm not saying no. But it was just a very, very different experience. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very well managed. Um, so awesome. We kind of already got into this, but talking about our experiences throughout the tour. Um, Andrew, do you want to talk a little bit about, what we actually got with the food and what that whole check-in process was? So if somebody is doing this, they kind of can have that, in their back pocket, so they know what that whole process is.
Yeah, well, after you just talking about the check-in experience, I'm thinking, because it wasn't under my name, so I'm just sitting there going do 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 until it was time to go in. But I can see, and now looking back on it, it was just kind of very, very crowded in that one area. And I'm thinking there should have been a little bit more signage about the people who had, because I think there was separate check-in lines for the private tours as
Yeah.
opposed to the regular tours. So I think maybe a little bit more direction that way would have been helpful. But yeah, once it was time to check in and we knew where we were going and we had our whole group, they, 5:30 on the dot, boom, they just took up right upstairs. Anybody that had a ticket that needed to scan it in, they just scanned our tickets, and then boom, it was time to eat. And when I tell you they had a spread and that I was so upset that I wasn't hungry because I had such a big lunch, they had such a spread and I was so upset that I didn't get to eat anything. Um, they had everything from lighter fare to like salads, cheeses, fruit, and then it moved into a little bit more substantial. They had chicken skewers, empanadas, tacos, and then even desserts, cookies, cupcakes, like you name it, they had it, and it was all themed and it had cute little names. And I was just so bummed, I'll tell you. I mean, it smelled delicious and everybody said everything was
It
amazing.
was delicious.
So I'm like,
Yeah.
next time I'm not eating all day, just 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 so I can eat it because it smells so good.
Oh yeah, it was like we literally had like a full meal
Yeah.
at there. And so that reception area, we basically, you had your kind of private area that you're brought into, and that was only for the private VIP tours. Or I keep saying VIP, but it's RIP tours. So we were kind of brought up in that area. And then I thought the really cool part about that too, like the fact that we did have this, incredible spread of food that we had like an hour to really enjoy. Um,
Yeah.
a cash bar, and then we
Mm.
also got to watch the opening ceremonies
Yep.
from this like patio area.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Jackie, have you watched the opening ceremonies from, I say down below,
From the ground.
yeah. With the crowd, had you done
Yes.
that? So how is that like? Was that just such a different experience? I've never watched them because I've always like the last time I did it, I did the stay and scream. So I can't compare like if you can see down below or like, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. Like we're right there.
Yeah, I mean, this was a game changer for me because I'm not that tall. So the first year that I did Horror Nights, I was able to see a little bit just because the main character from that year happened to be on stilts, so I could look up at him. But this year, I couldn't really see straight out and over people's heads. So I got to see the whole thing from our vantage point when we were up there. So it totally made a difference.
Yeah,
And it was just kind of fun, like it was relaxed. To your point that we got to be up there for an hour, we didn't have to like rush out to the houses. We got to take our time. And I feel like that's when we all really kind of started to take it in and like really start to enjoy what it was that we had paid extra for, because we're like, okay, we don't have to be down there and standing in line, and we can see everything. And it was fun getting to see people's reactions too,
yeah.
especially like as they're going in and the scare actor, you can see where the scare actors are, they can't necessarily through the crowd. So it was kind of fun watching and anticipating the scares and then seeing people get surprised by it too.
Oh my gosh. Now that you're saying that, I'm like, I probably could have stayed there like the entire event and just watched all of that unfold with a drink in my hand. And like, I would have been like, wow, this was really worth the money. Like, it was just such a cool thing to just get to like kind of watch the whole process go on. But then we also, Dwayne kind of took us kind of all together and he gave us a really good overview of like what the night was going to be, which I think was helpful because like I said, none of us had done this before. We had people that were kind of all different levels of Halloween Horror Nights. We had people that have done all 10 houses before. And then we had, Erica and I, this was our first time experiencing these houses. And he kind of gave us like what was going to be the roadmap for the night, but also said, like, you just communicate with me. And so he had said to me, since I was the one who had booked the tour, here's my number. I'll text you if like there's ever anything that, I need to kind of communicate to you and maybe I can't find you in the group. But if there's anything you need or anyone in the group needs, and like maybe he went backstage or whatever it is, he said, just shoot me a text and I'll be right there. And we kind of did that throughout the night a couple times when like he wanted to know if we wanted to do the show. So we had decided not to take advantage of that VIP seating. But if we had, we would have basically had to get there a little bit earlier, which would have cut into our time. But honestly, we did not have to worry about time the entire experience. So let's talk a little bit about the main reason we were there, though, the houses. So Jackie, how did that process go with our tour guide, and how is that different for you having done the houses before this?
Well, this is to me where you get the most value, not just with having a guide, but to your point, with having Dwayne specifically, because he kept telling us throughout the night, this is what you make of it. A lot of people come here and they're about the rides. Or a lot of people come here and they just want to get in the houses and they don't care about learning about them or hearing about the storylines or anything like that. So I would say within the first hour, he got a really good feel for our group and what it was that we wanted out of this. And he kept asking throughout the night, he kept following up, making sure that we were doing everything that we wanted to do and that we were pacing everything accordingly. But he was just so great with setting us up to make sure we got what we wanted out of the night. So what was kind of interesting for me, I thought that he was going to take us through each individual house. And I'm sitting there going, well, if they see a guide, they're going to scare because they care. They're going to want us to get our money's worth out of this. So they're going to be gunning for us in these houses with Dwayne leading the way, because all of the tour guides are dressed in scrubs. So Dwayne actually led us up to the houses and then just put us right in line with everybody else and let us go. He did not come in with us. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And I actually appreciated that more, that we got that normal experience. Like, we just got access to the houses without having to wait in line. But, it wasn't like they were going above and beyond to make sure that the tour got scared specifically, because I think a lot of groups probably do want that. Ours didn't necessarily. And we had, talked about that before we started. I had suggested maybe doing Ghostbusters first, because for those of us who had never done Halloween Horror Nights before, I figured it's something familiar. So it's a good icebreaker house, no pun intended if you've been to Ghostbusters. But I figured it was probably a good way to like ease in, because there's so many sites that you're going to recognize and it'll probably be more fun than scary. And Dwayne actually recommended a different house to start at because it was even less scary than Ghostbusters. So that's the kind of expertise that you're getting with the guide. And then before each house, he gave us the storyline, which I don't want to get too much into, because for those that do have tickets to Horror Nights, I don't want to spoil anything. So I don't want to give anything away necessarily, but just for an overview, like, one of the things that Dwayne told us was that there is a snail in each house. They do this every year. There's like a consistent prop or little, Easter egg that's going to be in every single house that you can look for. I did not see one of them, admittedly, probably because I was looking down at the floor at some points. But there were people in our group that would call out the snails. So that was kind of a fun thing to be able to look for as we went throughout the houses. And then it was just really cool learning a little bit more about each one. Like for the ones that I had been through already, for all 6 of those, I learned something new because of what Dwayne was setting up before we went in. We got to ask questions. Like for me, I was a huge Nickelodeon fan back in the day when I was growing up. So I wanted to know all about the houses that were in the studios where the Nickelodeon shows were filmed. There was something that I learned about one of the Ghostbusters props that broke my heart and was probably the scariest thing that I learned that entire evening. I'm not going to say what it is because again, I don't want to spoil it. And just other fun facts too, like with Eternal Bloodlines, which is the Universal Monster House. This year, they switched it up. In the past, it's been like Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein, like your classic Universal monsters. And this year, it's Bride of Frankenstein and Van Helsing's sister. And Dwayne had told us that not only is it an all-female cast in there, the entire production crew, the art, the production design team, the set decorators, all female. And like to me, that was worth it in and of itself to learn those kinds of things because where else would you find that out? I mean, you can do a little bit of online research. You'll find out a little bit about the house storylines, but for the most part, I didn't want anything spoiled. So I haven't really done any deep dives into the information. So that was just so cool to learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad that he to kind of piggyback off of that, because if I would have not had him tell me this is the storyline, this is what you're going to see happening and play out throughout the whole thing, I would have had no idea what was going on ever.
Yeah.
So it was really, really truthfully such a wonderful guide for that, because yeah, had he not kind of gone into the background of the story and the lore and this, that, and the other thing, I would have had no idea what was going on in there.
Yeah, he did a great job. And, because we can't compare it to another guide, I don't know if we just got super lucky because we had Dwayne or if this is kind of, what they do, but he was just an incredible personality. So we would 100% recommend Dwayne. He does do daytime Universal VIP tours. So that was where he was kind of like pulling some of that information into our tour too. Because we would ask him like, when we were being brought back to the houses, sometimes we would go backstage. So we would see different buildings than you might see if you're on stage, you're by where the lines are for the houses. And he would say like this building is used for XYZ or whatever. And all of us are like, oh, that's so cool. Because we're all like theme park nerds too. So that was really neat. And I thought just the process of how he did it was great because he would kind of find like a place where it was quiet, where we could kind of talk before we went into a house. And like I said, sometimes that was the backstage. So we actually got to see some of the casts for the houses kind of changing out. So we would see them all walk out, which was cool. Some of them like interacted with us while we were backstage. We saw the makeup tent for them in the backstage there too, which is really cool. But he would just kind of like bring us together and like Jackie said, tell us this story of the house, and it 1000% made it a better experience as you're walking through because you're kind of understanding like what went into the house and also like what are you supposed to be getting out of it. Because if he hadn't told me some of the things with like major suites, like Eric and I were talking about this before, that house is so chaotic that I would have been like, I don't even know what I just went through. Like
Yeah.
that was a fever dream.
Too
So
much
I
sweet.
felt, yeah, I was like, I know there's something with sweets. That's it.
Yeah.
But like, I thought that was just really heightened the experience. And like, if there was, like you said before, Andrew, if there had been no food, none of the other things, like it would have been worth it just for that background that I got before I went into houses. Awesome. Erica, anything else to add on the houses being our resident newbie?
Yeah, so just to like kind of add one more thing with Dwayne being awesome, when we were backstage and got to see the makeup, we got to see some of those characters. That's something that I would have missed completely had we not done this RIP tour. A lot of the houses that we went through, I was stuck on someone's back, like I was looking down, I was not looking up, I was not enjoying what all they have done to put this production on. So to be able to see really in detail, oh my goodness, these are people that they have created, these characters, and they've come to life. So it was fun to see that part that you get to see on the RIP tour that you don't get to see if you're waiting in line, if you're not backstage. So that was a benefit for someone that maybe goes through the houses, but doesn't necessarily pay attention. Your goal is to survive for 4.5 minutes to get to the end. So that was a very cool experience. Definitely worth it. If you didn't have any of the cash bars, no food, none of the extras, it was worth it just to see all that.
Yeah. And I just say before we go on to the way they literally just merge you into
Yeah.
the entrance of the house. So there's, the line of people and they kind of just hold that line and have you merge on into the house there. So it is extremely seamless. There's no, and this is what I have to compare it to because this is what I have to. For Disney, you would get into like the lightning lane. Um, uh, oh my goodness, lightning lane queue. There we go. That's the right word.
Yeah.
And you would still wait a little bit. You didn't have that with this, which again, it's a different tour. It's not a daytime tour. But that was kind of a nice thing to see because I was kind of expecting for me, it was that we were going to have, here's the express pass, the Halloween Horror Nights express pass that they have. They have a queue. You're going to stand in that queue with them and you'll kind of go. And that wasn't the case at all. You had immediate entrance, which was kind of cool to have. So, um, awesome. So I know we've kind of talked through this a bit as we've been going through this, but was there any standout moments for everybody that they wanted to talk about? But Erica, we'll start with you.
Yeah, the lounges. So where they had the bar set up, where they had the food set up, it was so cool to be able to see that side of Universal Studios. I'm a newbie for Halloween Horror Nights, but I'm also a newbie to Universal Studios. So getting to like we went through Jimmy Fallon. Is it called the Jimmy Fallon ride? I'm not sure what it's called,
Race
but we
through
got
New
to go.
York.
Yeah,
Okay.
Race Through New York with Jimmy Fallon. Yeah.
Yeah, so being able to go upstairs and actually see how that was set up, it mirrors 30 Rock, which is cool, and to have that balcony outside where you can kind of take in all the sights, all the people, see where their scare zones are. That was a new term for me for this tour, a scare zone, but just really getting to see how they put on that side. I had known from talking to you, Kelly, from talking to you, Jackie, about like the production of the houses themselves. But I actually got to really see how good of an event Universal Studios puts on. So it wasn't just the houses, it was the lounges. We were with some people that don't drink alcohol. The bartenders were able to make mocktails. Like I think that that's something that's a little extra that you see at Disney, but I got to see that with Universal too. So that was a cool experience. That really stood out to me with the lounges.
Yeah, that was so nice to have. And
Mhm.
it like happened at the perfect time for us to be up in that Jimmy Fallon patio porch, whatever we want to call it, because it started raining at that point too. And it was so nice not to have to like stand outside with an umbrella on, over me. But we were just like sitting there having our drinks in our blinky cup that I was very excited to have. And it was just it like is so chill. Like the whole thing, I feel like was just relaxed. It was, which is not what I normally would say for a Halloween Horror Nights night, because I feel like even when we just did two houses, well, some other people did like four of the houses that were there. It was more like, okay, let's like, we're moving. We got to get to another line, grab a drink wherever you can find the shortest line. If you want something, you want food, like good luck, you should have packed your granola bar and like get in line. So it was just so nice to have that for sure. Jackie and Andrew, anything else that we didn't touch on that were standout moments for you? We talked a lot about different things. So
Yeah, I can't think of, I mean, gosh, we've been gushing this whole time about how wonderful it was. I can't really think of any additional, like really standout moments, aside, I don't know, Erica touched on this, being able to be backstage and seeing the cast switch out in the houses and the blood splatter tent and the hair and makeup area and all that stuff. And I thought that was just so neat. Cause I know for me, I'm always like, okay, but how did they do this? Like I see what's going on here, but I want to see
Mhm.
how it was created, how it was made, things like that. And I know walking through some of the haunted houses and this characters would come out and I would just like stare at them and I'm just like, you look so good.
Yeah.
Like you look so good. The contests, the masks, the attention to detail, the set design, um, everything is just 100% over the top. Universal just knocks it out
Yeah.
as far as that.
Yeah.
I totally
Definitely
agree
the
with
best
that.
event.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jackie. Was cutting you off there.
Sorry, no, I was like, I totally agree with Andrea. It was so cool being able to see those things up close because I don't think that you would have been able to otherwise. And this is something I don't want to give away, but that was something we learned too, is how they do that changeover and how they switch out the actors so that they don't have to pause the lines going through and they can just do it so seamlessly, keep everybody going through, keep those lines as short as they possibly can, and just switch out the actors and make sure that they're getting their breaks throughout the night.
Yeah, I think we can give away one spoiler, don't you think? I feel like that's a good one to tell. We won't tell any of the things about the houses, but I thought that was a really cool one. So I think we should share that with any of our KMV listeners.
Of how they switch out the
Yeah.
actors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Only
So
if we book an RIP tour, then they get.
Go ahead, Jackie, you can share it.
So for some of the more popular houses, they'll have A, B, and C groups of actors. So and for certain ones, like in the sound stages, they will actually have two houses in one sound stage. So you don't know that you're going through one house and you might hear somebody screaming from another one. I mean, for the most part, they have really great soundproofing where you can't hear the audio and the actors, but like if somebody gets scared pretty good, like you're going to know about it, even if it's not in your house. So what they'll do is they have each of the sets labeled with what scene it is, and they will have, so for example, if the group of like the A actors, if they're all on, they will send B in right behind them. They'll tap them out, and then they'll have everybody from the A group line up outside, and then they'll just walk them to backstage so that they can take their break. And you never know.
Yep.
Yeah. I thought that was so cool that they,
Yeah.
go through it. And you don't like when you're experiencing the event, obviously, I think if you've gone enough times, like you are like, wow, this is a huge event. Like, and they do an incredible job with it. But then with the RIP tour, you get to kind of, like Andrew is saying, like understand how these things actually work. And you're like, oh my God, this is like they're working on these houses for 18 months in advance of the houses, coming to fruition, and the amount of work and just people that go into it. Like these scare actors are incredible, and the production teams that are involved in it and everything. So if you are a theater person, a TV person, anything like that, like I would 1000% recommend this event. Erica can give her thoughts on it, being someone who doesn't love scary things. I think that it's more overhyped for it being super scary than it actually is. It is
Yeah.
so much more about the entire production that you get to see, and you're like, I want to be in this cult. Like whatever this HHN cult is, like I am in it. It is so fun. And just like, it's just an awesome time to be at. So I don't know, Erica, do you want to
Yeah,
share
just
what
to
your
kind
thoughts were?
of add on to that, I think it was the fourth or fifth house. Once you kind of realize the setup, like, okay, it's a maze. I can do this. I took lead. I went through a quiet place first. I led the team, and it did scare me close to the end. I did get caught. But yeah, once you just kind of really appreciate the setup, you appreciate the production, you start to value it more than just like a scare tactic for them. And you appreciate it more. Like I'm already ready for next year. And now I know what to expect, but you really get to take in everything that they've done and you value it, even from someone who I'm a not so scary girl. Like that is me. I will never miss a not so scary Halloween party. But now I'm looking forward to not only that, but Halloween Horror Nights next year. Like this is something where I can't wait to see what they've already been planning for next year's houses. Dwayne told us they start these productions 18 months before Halloween Horror Nights. So we're a year in for them to be preparing for next year, which is exciting to know.
Yeah. So any closing thoughts on the RIP tour before we get into some just closing questions and things like that? Anything else that you guys want to touch on?
I can say I have been back since we did this tour, and with all of the new information that I learned, even greater appreciation for it now.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm hoping to go back because I'm like, well, now I want to see the houses again with all that information. So this is like such a good sales thing for Universal. They get you because I'm like, oh, I gotta go see them again.
The problem though, I don't see myself going without doing the RIP tour. It was such a great experience.
I know.
I will go again next year with RIP tour.
Yeah, I've already had people that are like, okay, so when you go next year, I want to go. And I'm like,
Yeah.
limit to 10 people, guys.
But yeah.
First, yeah.
Start your own group. We've got ours.
Yeah. Awesome. So thank you guys so much for coming on and chatting about this. But I wanted to see, first of all, do you feel that the RIP tour was worth it? I'll ask that question. And then tell me what your favorite house was for the evening and why. And we'll do just kind of a, round the table here. So, Andrea, was it worth it? What was your favorite house and why?
100% it was worth it. And that's without being able to eat anything. But 100%, it was totally worth it. Yeah, like I think this experience just really spoiled us. And I really think if you're going to do Halloween Horror Nights and you want to do Halloween Horror Nights right, and right the first time,
Yeah.
with all of the food and at a leisurely pace, and with all the background information and the knowledge and everything that we've gained, and being able to see things and go backstage and do things that not everybody else gets to do, it's 100% worth it. 100%.
And no stress either. That was the nice.
No stress,
Yeah.
no stress. And I am like a full stress all the time girly, but there was no stress. There's no stress. Like we were out when we were hanging out at the VIP lounge above Jimmy Fallon. We're just all out there having a good time, drinking our drinks, laughing, chatty Cathying it up, and then Dwayne's like, "Whenever you guys are ready."
And he's like, if you want to stay, that's totally fine. He's like, we still have hours to go. He's like, I just want to make sure, that was
And
just like
let's
the
talk
best.
about one more thing. We got all 10 houses done in a torrential downpour. So take an hour out of that for just chilling in the lounge because it was pouring down rain. We were done with all 10 houses by 11:30.
Yeah. Which was crazy.
So if you wanted to push it till 2 because you had the tour guide until 2, which, for a not private tour, you don't get. But had we wanted to then do the houses again, we could have. If we wanted to go do the rides, we could have. If we wanted to do, the world was our oyster.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think 11:30 came. We were all getting up there. We were wet a little bit, so we called it a night. And we called it a night early. But I still think we got every penny's worth.
Yeah,
every
for
penny's
sure.
worth.
Yeah,
For
we
that,
were all
even
a group of
with
30s and
cutting it out at
40s. Like
11:30.
we were not trying to stay up. We were like, if we get to bed by midnight, that'd be so great.
Yeah. But my favorite house was Ghostbusters. Was it Frozen Empire or Frozen Kingdom or whatever? And I think that house was just so fun. And I loved all the little marshmallow guys. And I don't know if you noticed this, but many of them were their own little animatronics, own little machines. A lot of them moved. However, small movements, but they were many of them were, little robots, little animatronics. So a lot of them were moving. Jackie, my heart broke with you with that when we came into that room, and I just wanted to cry.
It was rough.
We won't share that spoiler.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of nostalgia in that one. It was really fun. The sets were beautiful, intricate. It was chaos. It was controlled chaos, and then so full of nostalgia.
Yeah, that was a good one. Jackie, how about you?
1,050% worth it. And that's coming from somebody who has the Rush of Fear pass. The stress is already gone of knowing that I'm going to get to all 10 houses. And I still thought this was worth it on top of it. To be able to do everything in one night, the overall experience, the food, the drinks, everything. To Andrea's point too, being that we got stuck in the rain, I kept thinking that. I was like, these poor people where they're here on vacation for a week and this is their one night to do this. And it's pouring. And we had the luxury of stopping for an hour and knowing that we would still get into all the houses. Like that was worth it in and of itself. I know that's a very unique experience to our group. But just, if you're on the fence about doing something like this, that's something to keep in mind, is that this is totally at your own pace and what you make of it. So, if you're fortunate enough to have good weather, that's an hour you can have at your leisure, getting a drink. You can spend time at each of the restaurants that's available to you, and you don't have to worry about it. So just so worth it. My favorite house, I feel like this might change by the end of my Horror Nights experience this month, but so far, Goblin's Feast is holding strong. For a totally original concept, I thought that they just knocked it out of the park as far as the set design, the scares, and there's kind of like a silly element to it too that I wasn't expecting. So to have a house come out swinging that way, where I have no prior attachment to an IP, like that's kind of what makes it the most impressive to me.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was such a
that
fun
was a
house.
fun one. That one was
Yeah.
fun.
That was the only one where like scares actually got me. And I was saying to Pat, my husband, that I think it was the last house that we did. So my buzz of my gin and seltzers had worn off, and like they got me twice because something like came down. It was like literally the scare actor going away, and it was the loud noise, and I was like, there's nobody there. I'm like, oh my God, this is so embarrassing. Like, but it was a great house.
Hmm.
Erica, how about you?
Yeah, so definitely worth it. I think I traveled the farthest from everyone, so it was about a 5.5 hour drive. I would say, hands down, if you're coming from out of town, it is worth every penny. The RIP tour, we had no intention of going back a second time this season. So being able to know that we could have hit all 10 houses, we didn't have to rush. So hands down worth it to go on the RIP tour. I would say my favorite house was probably A Quiet Place. It's the only one that I even knew sort of what to expect, because I'm a big John Krasinski fan. So I've never seen the movie, but I knew what to expect. And it was one that I had decided I'm going to keep my eyes open. I'm going to check out these sets. I'm never going to watch the movie, but I'm going to see kind of what's going on. So that to me was the best one. They did get me at the end, a couple of little pop out scare actors, but I thought the way that they, not to give anything away, how they had that set up, walking through the house, walking through the outside, like it felt like I was walking through a movie set, and that was incredible.
Yeah, that was it was interesting too, like our group had such different thoughts on houses, which was fun to talk about too throughout the evening, what we thought about the houses, what we liked, didn't like, or whatever. I don't think anyone didn't like things, but I should say what was our favorites and not our favorites. So I will echo everything that you guys said. I think that it was 100% worth it. Already planning to do another RIP tour next year. And just ditto everything that you guys said. And favorite house was Insidious for me, which I was surprised about because that was a house that I was like the most nervous to go into, because everyone had been hyping it up. And I think, I don't know if I let everyone down because I don't react very much, but like people were like, I'm going to stand behind you so I can see what you do in houses. And I'm like, you're going to be really let down because like, this is me in a house. Like I just like shake my shoulders when I get scared. So I was like, all right, this is going to be the house that breaks me. And I just thought it was so well done. Like, I mean, there is scares like left and right. But the costuming, I think, stood out a ton in that house. And the lighting, the way that they did it, you could really actually appreciate that on the characters. Whereas some of the other scare actors that you'll see will kind of like come out from a corner, so you don't get like as much of a view of them. But I think just like overall, the way that house was done, and it was one of those houses where like you thought it was going to be over several times. And then you were like, oh my gosh, we're still going. And that just kind of added to it. So I thought that was really cool how they did that whole production. But awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming on and chatting about the RIP tour. Thank you for doing the RIP tour with me. I think we're all in agreement that we'll be back together next year for Halloween Horror Nights 34.
Definitely.
But before we go, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you on Instagram, online, whatever it is. Like I said, all of these wonderful people that are with me are travel advisors with KMV Travel, so they can help book Disney, Universal, cruise lines, all inclusives, all different things. So where can they find you at, Jackie?
So besides being a travel advisor, I also host a podcast called Monorail Radio. So we're at Monorail Radio on all major social media platforms or at monorailradio.com.
So, and Andrea.
On Instagram, you can find me at Happily Ever Andrea, and Facebook, Enchanted Escapes by Andrea.
Beautiful. And Erica.
And you can find me eRiley12 on Instagram, and a lot of just Erica Riley on Facebook if you see anything for travel news.
Erica likes to just send people to KMV Travel, and then we just funnel. Yeah. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate you coming on, and thank you all for listening to the show. If you have any comments, if you went to Halloween Horror Nights, you've done an RIP tour, you want to do an RIP tour, let us know in the comments below. And as always, be sure that you are subscribed, you're following, that you've liked this video. And if you would like assistance planning your next vacation, reach out to KMV Travel through all our information below. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.